How to field strip a Shield Plus. In this video I will show you two ways to disassemble a Shield Plus for cleaning. So first we want to verify that the gun is unloaded, no magazine, no round in the chamber. Now there are two ways to release the slide for cleaning. Now in the manual it tells you to go down inside and rotate this sear deactivation lever forward. And what that does, it lowers the sear, which I'll show you inside in a minute, so that you can remove the slide. So after you do that, rotate this lever, release the slide stop, and now you can pull the slide right off the top. So just to show you what's going on here, this is the sear, and when this lever is not rotated, the sear is raised, and that prevents this part of the firing pin to slide past it. So that's what keeps the slide from coming off of the gun. So there is another way to lower the sear, and that is to simply pull the trigger. So Smith & Wesson is just trying to avoid you having to pull the trigger by putting in that sear deactivation lever. So let me show you. First we're going to put the deactivation lever back in its place. So if you look inside, the sear activation lever is rotated back up where it was. Okay, so the other way to lower the sear is to press the trigger. So if you are 100% sure there are no rounds in the firearm, you can treat it as a Glock. However, you will have to rotate this down, move the slide forward, and then press the trigger, and your slide will come off the front of the gun. The sear activation lever does not have to be rotated in that case, and you can see that the trigger lowers the sear in order to get your slide off. Okay, so once you get your slide off, simply depress the recoil spring and guide rod assembly a little bit, pull that up, and now you can lift up your barrel and pull it out. And this is as far apart as you need to disassemble your Shield Plus for cleaning purposes. If you found this video helpful, please hit like below, please subscribe, check out the links below for some cleaning products, and thanks for watching. Today we're going to disassemble, clean, lubricate, and reassemble a M&P Shield Plus. First, we always want to unload the gun, lock the slide back, verify there is no magazine in the gun and no round in the chamber. Once we have verified the gun is unloaded, we need to rotate the sear deactivation lever. The sear deactivation lever is that yellow lever that you see down inside the ejection port. You just need to get a small screwdriver, put it in there, and rotate that lever forward. Now we can take the slide off. Once that is done, you can rotate the takedown lever 90 degrees forward like that. Take the slide, push it back until the slide stop disengages, and then you can let the slide come right off the front of the frame. Turn the slide over, press on the recoil spring and guide rod assembly a little bit to pull it up and out. Push your barrel up, grab a hold of it, take it out just like that. That's as far apart as we need to go to clean the Shield Plus. You don't really need much to clean your Shield Plus. You're going to need some kind of a cleaner. I'm going to use Hobby's No. 9 gun bore cleaner. I like to put it in a dispenser. This is a Menda pump dispenser. It pumps up a little at a time so you don't contaminate the whole container of solvent there. You're going to need some kind of a gun oil. I like original gun oil. It has a very low odor. It's non-toxic. You're going to need some cotton swabs. I like these dual tips. They have a pointy end and a regular end so you can get in all the tight spaces inside the gun. And to clean the inside of the bore, you're going to need some kind of a bore brush and a rod and some patches that we're going to push through there. If you don't have a rod and brushes and patches, you can always pick up a universal handgun cleaning kit like this one. This is from Breakthrough Clean Technologies. It's got everything in there that you're going to need. It's got different size brushes, and it's got a rod that you put together. I'll show you that. I'll be using that later in the video. And it even has some oil in here for you to use. Another optional item that I use is called a bore snake. If you have a bore snake, I'll show you how that saves you a lot of time. You don't have to put a bunch of patches through your gun barrel to use the bore snake. Of course, you need a bunch of cotton rags. I just cut up a t-shirt into little squares like this and use them throughout the process. Alright, now that the gun is field stripped, we're going to clean each piece and then we're going to lubricate and put it back together. So let's start with the barrel. So the barrel is going to be the dirtiest part of the gun, so it's the most important to clean, especially the inside of the barrel, which is called the bore. So you can see inside the barrel, those grooves is what makes the bullet spin. You can see kind of the crud and dirt that is built up in there, so we're going to clean that all up. Also, this ramp here is where the rounds slide up into the chamber here, so we want to make sure that's nice and clean. So I'm going to need a brush. I'll pick out the 9mm, and I'm going to need a loop to hold the patches. This actually comes with patches. Not a lot of patches there, but there's a few to get you started. We're going to put the loop on there. Since I'm going to use some solvent, I'm going to put some rubber gloves on. First, we want to soak the inside of the barrel with solvent. So we just get a patch, feed it through the loop like that, and then I just pump up some solvent on here, get the patch pretty damp, and then I just push the patch through. And because it's a loop, I can push it both ways. Right now I'm just trying to get the inside of the barrel wet with solvent, so you can see some of the dirt that comes out of there. Typically I'm going to let this sit for a few minutes to kind of work to loosen the dirt. Then I'm going to take the loop off, put the appropriate sized brush on there, and then after this has sat for a little bit, I'm going to push the brush through back and forth a few times, and this will loosen all the dirt. Take the brush off, put this back on, get some more patches wet. Alright, and now we're going to push it through again, and now even more dirt's going to come off because we just loosened it with the brush. How much dirt is in there. Continue to push a few patches through here with solvent on them. You basically just want to do this a couple of times until the patch comes out relatively clean. Once it comes out clean, push some dry patches through there to get all the solvent out as well as the remainder of the dirt. Then I'm going to take a rag and wipe it all off, get all the solvent off of there. We want to make sure the outside got pretty clean too, and always make sure you get your feed ramp nice and shiny. If you look through there now, that is pretty shiny. Now that's a clean barrel. If you want to save a lot of time, you can always use a bore snake. Saves a lot of time cleaning the bore or the inside of the barrel. A bore snake is basically like a long quilted cotton snake. It's got your brushes built into it already. So what you would do for your barrel, you would just take it. You still want to get some solvent in there. Just get a cotton swab and just slop a little solvent in there to get things started. And then after a few minutes, just take your bore snake, drop that through. Just run your bore snake through 2 or 3 times. The brushes are going to do the job of loosening up all the carbon and other crud deposited in there. Then the rest of this bore snake is going to act like a whole bunch of patches that you're putting through there. So a couple of passes through there and your barrel's going to be pretty clean. So that's a way you can save a lot of time cleaning your barrel. I'll put links in the description down below for all of these items. We are now done with the barrel. Alright, next we're going to clean the slide. Now the user manual just says to take a cloth and kind of wipe this down, and if it's not too dirty you can do that, but I'm going to do a little bit better than that. I'm going to get this clean with a little bit of solvent as well. So what I typically do here, I'll get my gun brush, I'll dip it in a little bit of solvent, and I'll just kind of brush the inside here just lightly. You want to especially get into the slide cuts. Those are the grooves on the inside of either side where the slide moves along the frame when it's firing. So you want to especially get in there. These bristles work great for that. And just kind of spread it around all the places inside that might have got dirty, and make sure you get the breech face. This is the breech face. This is where the firing pin comes out and where the extractor that pulls the brass out is. So you want to get this nice and clean. So just kind of brush that area with some solvent. Alright. Once you get a little solvent in there, not a lot, just a little bit, just get it wet with solvent. Clean off your brush if you want. After a minute or two, get yourself some of your cotton rags and wipe everything as best you can, just with the rag in your hands. Just get everything as good as you can. Okay, you don't want to put solvent directly on your sights. I'm not sure if it's going to damage them or not. Just keep it to the metal part. To get in all the nooks and crannies in here and in this groove real good, just get a cloth, kind of lay it in there, and then get your gun brush and use the bristles in the gun brush to push the cloth into the grooves. So you can kind of just work it back and forth like this. And the bristles of the brush are going to push the cloth into those grooves and get down in all those places that you couldn't get to. That also works well for the breech face, to get that nice and clean. And then just follow up with your cotton swabs. You got your pointy end here. That'll get right down in all the corners to get all the rest of that solvent out of there. You don't have to get every little bit of solvent out of there. Just do the best you can. Okay, make sure that breech face is clean. Alright, it is looking pretty good. Alright, when you're done with the inside, just wipe the outside. You probably got a couple little drops of solvent on the outside. Off their patches and get it nice and spiffy. Let's move on to the frame. We're going to basically do the same thing, but I'm going to use a very, very tiny, just a little drop of gun oil there. Now I want to make sure I clean these rails here. This is where the slide moves back and forth. There's one there, one over here, one up front here, and one here. That's the most important thing to really get clean. And then you can kind of just look inside, and again, just run this around in any of the metal places that you see. Kind of get any carbon out of there. Alright, and once you get that, and get your rag, and just wipe everything off. Same way we did with the slide. Get everything you can with your fingers. Then you can use your brush to push it down into the tight spots. And then get your cotton swabs and just get in there and get the last bits that you couldn't get. Alright, the frame cleaned up pretty good here. And if the grips are dirty, you can just wipe them down with a cloth. Get a little gun oil or even soap and water would work well for this. I wouldn't get too much solvent on the plastic parts. And the last piece is going to be your recoil spring and guide rod. This really doesn't need much. I would just get a brush and brush that off. Probably doesn't really have much dirt, if any, on it. Give it a good wipe down with a cloth, and we should be good to go on that. Alright, as far as cleaning the magazine goes, these magazines can be disassembled, but I'm going to do that in a different video. And when I do that, I'll link that up in the corner here. But for our purposes today, we're just going to make sure it's clean. So just make sure you wipe it down. If it's real dirty, or if you dropped it at the range, you might want to get a little drop of oil on a rag and just wipe it down that way. You don't want to leave too much oil residue on here. Just wipe it down and get it clean. Examine the lips here, make sure nothing is bent or broken. Okay, to lubricate the M&P Shield Plus, we're going to follow the manual here. It says to use a high quality gun oil, and there's 7 places that we want to lubricate this gun. I like to use original gun oil. This is non-toxic. It's also non-scented. So I do this in the house. I don't want to stink up the house. I don't want to worry about it being dangerous to get on my fingers or anything like that. So you can use something like this. I also like this Pro Shot Zero Friction. If you like a real pinpoint applicator, this is perfect for that kind of thing. So this is another great option, and there's a whole lot of other ones out there. I'll put links in the description. But we're going to start with the original gun oil here. So it's real simple to lubricate. We're just going to hit, there are 5 places on the frame that it indicates to lubricate, and those are, you got the 4 rails. You got a rail here, rail, and then we're going to lubricate right in here at the end of the trigger bar. So you just want a very small amount of lube. I'm only going to put like just a touch. Just a touch there. And just a touch right in this area here. Alright, and Just want to dab any excess off, just leave a little on there. Just got these areas a little wet with some lube. This is the other area here, right here at the end of the trigger bar right here. And the last two places are actually on the barrel. We want to put a drop here. The top of the barrel rubs along the top of the slide in there and right here. And what I would usually do, put one drop in each place, just kind of spread it around a little bit. The barrel goes through the front of the slide, so we want a little lube there. Just kind of get a film of lubricant around the barrel. Not much at all. If it feels like a lot, just can dab it off. You don't need much at all. And that is all the manual says for lubrication of the Shield Plus. All right, now we are ready to reassemble the Shield Plus. It's just the opposite of how we took it apart. Take your slide upside down, drop the barrel in, look like that. Take your recoil spring and guide rod, it goes in this way. It goes into the front, and then squeeze it so it sits down in that notch. You want that centered as much as possible. If it's not centered, you're not going to get the slide on. So that'll sit down like that. And then simply take the slide and line it up. Line up the slide like this, and simply push the slide onto the frame. Go all the way back and lock it in place with the slide stop. Rotate your takedown lever back up like that, and then move the slide back and release it. Now that sear activation lever inside that you lowered at the beginning, all you need to do is insert a magazine and it'll put that back where it was, so you don't have to go back in there to do that. After you have reassembled your Shield Plus, you just want to rack the slide a few times, make sure it feels right. The next thing you're going to want to do is a quick function and safety check. I'll put that video right up here in the corner so you can go do that next, just to make sure everything's working good. Alright, if you like this video, please check out the links below in the description, hit the like button below, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Okay, this is going to be a quick function and safety check for the M&P 9 Shield Plus handgun. So anytime you reassemble a handgun or the magazine for a handgun, you want to do a couple of quick function and safety checks. So first we need to verify that this firearm is completely unloaded, nothing in the chamber, no magazine in the gun. So the Shield Plus manual does not have a function and safety check in it, so I'm just going to show you some of the things that I normally do after reassembling a firearm. First, we want to make sure the magazine catch works properly. So make sure you have an empty magazine, put a magazine in the gun, make sure you can't pull it out, and make sure it does drop out when you hit the magazine release. You can do that a couple of times. Do that with all your magazines if you have more than one. Next thing we want to do is always make sure the gun is empty before you pull the trigger. Okay, so make sure your gun is always pointed in a safe direction, even if you know the gun is unloaded. All right, so we want to check the safety on the trigger. So this trigger has this little safety button here. So the trigger will not fire unless this little safety is depressed. So you want to try and press the trigger without pressing that middle safety. Point the gun in a safe direction, kind of pinch the sides of the trigger. You should not be able to press the trigger back by pinching the sides. And then once again, point the gun in a safe direction and make sure the trigger does press when you press the trigger safety, and it should fire. Okay, next we're going to check the trigger reset. So again, verify the gun is empty and unloaded, point the gun in a safe direction, press the trigger and hold it to the rear. While you're holding it to the rear, rack the slide and then gently and slowly release the trigger till you hear the click. Let your trigger reset, and now you should be able to press the trigger again and you should hear the striker fall. Alright, that's the trigger reset test. Now the last thing that I like to do is to verify that the gun is going to extract and eject rounds properly. So the way to do that is get some snap caps or dummy rounds. These are just fake ammunition that are the exact size of 9mm rounds. I'll take about 5 of them. I'll load them into the magazine. This is also a great test to make sure your magazine feeds and works properly. Alright, once you have 5 or more dummy rounds loaded into the magazine, loaded into the gun, rack the slide to load one of them into the chamber, and now we're just going to simulate firing the gun by racking the slide briskly. Each time I rack the slide, one round, one dummy round, should be extracted and ejected from the gun, and then the next one loaded in. After I rack the slide 5 times, the magazine will be empty and the slide should lock back on its own. So make sure you do this briskly so you don't jam anything. And the slide locks back when the magazine is empty. Alright, so that worked very well. Alright, so that is the end of the safety and function test for the M&P Shield Plus. If you found this video helpful, please hit like below. You can check out the description for links to some dummy rounds if you'd like to pick some of those up. Please subscribe, and thanks for watching. In this video, we're going to disassemble and clean a Shield Plus magazine. This is a 13-round magazine specifically, and I'm going to show you how to take it apart and clean it as part of your gun cleaning maintenance. In order to disassemble this magazine for cleaning, you need to remove the base plate here. This piece here slides off in this direction. Grab a hold of the sides here like this and kind of pull back, and once you get to here, you want to put your thumb over top here because there is a potential for the spring to push up here. If you have trouble pulling this off with your fingers, there isn't a whole lot for you to grab onto, so it's not a problem. Just get a screwdriver and just gently wedge it in here and just turn it slightly, and that'll get it started for you. Try not to bugger up your magazine, and then you just pull it off that way. So now that you have the base plate off, this piece lifts off the top, this piece also lifts off, and now your spring is captured here. Make sure you wear eye protection, because if this spring comes loose, this is going to pop right up into your face. So what you actually want to do is turn it upside down, but I just want to show you what you're doing. So you just kind of got to move this out from underneath the lips on the side and work this out. So when this comes out, the follower is going to come down with it. So this is your follower. It's best to just leave it connected to the spring like that. And this is just your magazine tube. All you really need to do to clean the magazine is just wipe all the pieces down. This magazine's pretty clean, but if the pieces are really dirty, you can use a CLP. This is original gun oil. You can use this. Just put it on a rag, a little drop on a rag, and use that to wipe everything. But you don't want to leave any oily residue in here because that could affect the primers on your ammunition. So just wipe down all the pieces basically. Just wipe your spring down. You can just run the spring through a cotton cloth like that. Clean off your follower up here. If you use any oil to clean this, make sure you wipe it all off. Just clean it up real good. You can even use soap and water on this. Just make sure it's completely dry before you put it back together so you don't have any rust. You can wipe this down on the outside. And to get the inside clean, what I usually do is get a rag and just kind of push it through a couple of times. You could even look down in there and just kind of wipe it with a cotton swab if it's really dirty. To put it back together, this is going to go in this orientation, so just push this up through the bottom, wiggle the spring back and forth. Again, wear eye protection for this. If this spring comes loose, you don't want it to pop you in the face. Just push the spring down in there. Now this spring will kind of sit in there. Again, be careful. Keep your thumb over that or something. Once you get the spring back into the magazine, this piece is next. Sits on top like that. Sit on the magazine like that. Then this piece sits down on top. So this is what it looks like. Now what you have to do, you have to pull all of this down to expose these metal pieces on either side, because that is what you're going to slide. These little slots line up with those metal pieces. So it's going to go like this. See, those slots have to go down and line up with those metal pieces, and it'll slide on, and then now you can just snap it closed and everything should be nice and tight on both sides if you did it right. After you put the magazine back together, I always like to test to make sure I did everything right. I'm going to get some A-Zoom 9mm snap caps. I'll put a link down in the description if you don't have any of these. These are great for all kinds of testing purposes. I'm just going to load 5 dummy rounds into this magazine. I'm going to take the Shield Plus and make sure it's completely unloaded. Insert my magazine with dummy rounds in it. I'm going to drop the slide, and it just loaded a dummy round. I'm going to simulate firing this weapon by racking the slide multiple times, and each time I rack the slide, one of the rounds should be extracted and ejected from the gun. I'm just going to make sure everything is feeding properly. This is a good test for the gun as well as the magazine after reassembly. So make sure you do it briskly because you don't want anything to jam up. So just basically, and then on the last one, the slide should lock back on an empty magazine. So this shows me that my magazine's put together properly and my gun is put together properly. Alright, if you like this video, please hit like below, please subscribe, check out the description for dummy rounds if you don't have any, and thanks for watching. Today we're going to disassemble the M&P Shield Plus Slide. So we're going to remove the slide from the frame and disassemble the slide completely for cleaning purposes. So first, as usual, we verify that the firearm is completely unloaded, no round in the chamber, and no magazine is in the firearm. So now we need to field strip the gun and remove the slide. So with the slide locked back, rotate the takedown lever as so, let the slide forward, press the trigger, and the slide will come off of the firearm just like that. And now we're going to remove the recoil spring and guide rod assembly and lift out the barrel. Alright, so now we have the slide. We're going to remove the firing pin assembly first, and the way to do that is to remove this slide cover plate on the back, but you can't do that because there is pressure from the striker spring inside. It's pressing up on a spacer in there, so we need to remove that pressure. All we need to do is take a small screwdriver. So all you need to do is go in here and press down on this white piece, on this white plastic piece, and while you're pressing down on it at the same time, push the cover plate up and you'll see it's starting to come off. So you can push that all the way off. Keep your thumb over there because there is spring pressure, and make sure that this does not pop up and hit you in the face. Alright, once the cover plate is removed, what you need to do next is press down on this plunger until you hear a click, and then your firing pin will be released. Pull that out. Alright, now that we have removed the firing pin, you'll notice that the firing pin plunger is still in place. And in order to remove that, you will need to remove the rear sight, which I highly do not recommend doing unless you really need to get in there and clean this. So what we can do to avoid removing that, we can use Gun Scrubber by Birchwood Casey, which is a aerosol cleaner that we can spray in here that will help clean out any debris or any buildup that is in there. So we're going to do that instead of pulling this out, because this is Loctited in. You're going to have to heat this up and really crank it off. Then you're going to have to pound this out of this dovetail slot here, which is a whole lot of extra work, and you're probably going to end up dinging the side of your sights. I would not recommend doing that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the extractor, which is held in by this very small pin right here. You want to get yourself a 1/16 punch, which is pretty tiny, and something like a real avid bench block to put it on so that when you push the pin out, it has a place to go. So as you can see, the other side of that pin is hidden by the optical cover. So this is just a Torx number 8 to get these screws out of here. So you're going to want to get these out. These are Loctited in also, but they're not Loctited with the red Loctite. They're just tight, but they're not impossible to get out. So just pull these out. Remove your optical cover, and then you're going to see the other side of that pin that holds that in there. So I'm just going to set this on my smart bench block here, which won't mar or damage the finish of your gun. I'm just going to set it on a sturdy spot here, get my 1/16 punch, line it up on the hole. I'm just going to lightly tap on that. Alright, and as you can see, the pin's coming out. Hold it over the hole. Alright, and then I'm push that all the way out. So now the pin has been knocked out, and the punch is taking the place of that pin. So it is still holding the extractor in place. So what you want to do is put your finger here so the extractor doesn't come out till you're ready. Remove the pin punch. All right, and now you have the spring for the extractor pushing it out. You also need to be careful There's another spring involved here that you're going to see in a moment, and you want to make sure you cover the top of this extractor. There's your extractor spring, and the other spring I'm talking about is a spring that is right inside here, and this puts pressure on the pin that goes through there to kind of keep the extractor in place. This will go flying across the room, which I know firsthand because for the first time I took this apart, it did, and it took me a half an hour to find it. So keep your finger over that. If you want to take this out, you can, but I'm telling you to be very careful. Put your thumb over the spring. It just comes out like that. All right, so it's a little spring with a little piece of plastic that goes in there. All right, so those are the extractor parts and the firing pin parts. Now the firing pin does come apart a little bit further. All right, so to take this apart, just set it in something that holds it up off the table like that. Grab the spring, press down on the spring, and this cup will come up, and the cup will slide off of the pin, and then gently let go of the spring, and it'll come right up off of the pin, and then the spacer comes off along with this secondary little spring there. All right, and there are all your pieces. Okay, so now we're just going to clean up all the pieces in the slide here, and I'm going to use a pipe cleaner, some cotton swabs. I love these with double tips. They got a big end and a pointy end for getting in all the tight spaces. I use these Otis pipe cleaners, and these are the cotton swabs that I like to use. I'll put links down in the description if you're interested in these. And just a cut up t-shirt is what I use for wiping things down. I'm just going to wipe everything down. You don't need to lube any of these. You just want to make sure that there's no buildup on any of these parts. Get them more or less clean. You can use the cotton swab, clean everything up real good. And this piece here, just clean these little slots where the spring goes. I clean that little pinhole there. And if anything's dirty on the inside, these springs don't really get too dirty, but you can use a pipe cleaner or the cotton swabs to get everything nice and wiped down. This is really tiny. Wipe that down a little bit. Okay, once you get all the pieces wiped down, you go to the slide next, and we just want to kind of clean this up a little bit. We definitely want to clean up in the firing pin slot here. So I'm just going to get a cotton swab and kind of clean up all these areas. I'm not going to clean the whole slide. That'll be covered in the cleaning video for the entire gun, but I'm just going to get the critical areas where the firing pin and the extractor go that we are just dealing with right now. Clean in the firing pin channel and get all the crud out of there. Last thing I like to do is run a pipe cleaner down there, out through the breech face, make sure there's nothing built up in there. And then I'll clean the actual breech face. And on the extractor, of course, you want to make sure that the hook part right here is especially clean. That's where the extractor grabs onto the brass, so you want to make sure that's nice and clean. And once everything is wiped down, we're just going to reassemble. Before we put everything back together, I'll show you how I clean this one last area here. I'll show you how I get some aerosol gun cleaner and spray it right down into this area inside the slide that we didn't want to take apart. Okay, so we're out in the garage now. I want to clean this little area with a plunger right here that we didn't want to take off because we didn't want to mess with the rear sight. So to get that little area, you can see down in there, there's a little spot you can actually kind of get to. So I'm going to use some Birchwood Casey gun scrubber, which I use sometimes to clean guns out in the garage. It's a little messier than cleaning in the house. And I'm just going to spray some of this into that little area there. And the gun scrubber it'll evaporate all by itself. Just give it a minute and then just wipe off any residue on there. I would avoid spraying any of it directly onto your sights. Alright, so now we can go in and put it back together. Okay, so now we're going to start the reassembly, and first we're just going to reassemble the firing pin assembly. So just get the firing pin, put on this secondary spring, it doesn't matter which way, and then slide the firing pin into the spacer. Now it does fit a certain way, okay, so that the shape of the metal fits the shape of the spacer, especially on this side right here. There's that flat side there. Alright, so it goes on like that. Then the spring slides on there, doesn't matter which end. And then we have this little cup here. So to get that back on, We want to put this back on the bench block so you're supporting the lug at the bottom like that. Pinch the spring and push it down well past this thinner part here, and get your little cup. Put the cup on there like that, and then allow the spring back up. Oops, not like that. Allow the spring back up to capture the cup on there like that. This lug should be sitting in the spacer just like that. Alright, now to put the little spring assembly back into the extractor, it's going to go in this side and it sits in this orientation. So that is going to end up going into that slot like that, although with the spring obviously fitting in here. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can either put it in like this, get a screwdriver and kind of force that, keeping your thumb over that so that if it gets away it doesn't go flying across the room. Pop it in that way. Just make sure it's all the way in there. Be careful when you remove your finger. It should end up looking just like that. The other way you can try to do it, if that's a little tricky, you could try putting it in this side first. Seat the spring in there like that. Put your thumb over there. Make sure this is sitting that. And then take maybe a little bit bigger pin punch that can fit right in the slot on the end of that little plastic piece. And just gently move that forward, compressing the spring until you can push it back down into the slot like that. That might be a little bit easier. I've had better luck doing it that way than the other way, but both ways seem to work. Alright, now we want to put the extractor back into the slide. And the way the extractor fits in here, the extractor fits in like this. There's a little piece that hangs down here, so you kind of have to put that inside first and then kind of bring it around like that. So that's what we're going to do. Whenever you're handling this extractor, be extremely careful about this spring and this little plastic piece in here, because they will go launching across the room. Be very careful about that. So what we want to do, put the slide on its side, take the extractor spring and drop it in so it's sitting like that. Take the extractor, hook it around like that, and then bring it over and make sure it's sitting right on that spring there. Alright, so now put something white underneath so you can see through this hole here. Alright, so we want to turn it over, and you want to squeeze this down and move it around until you see straight through this hole. Make sure that hole is perfectly round. You don't want it like that, and you don't want it like that. You want a perfectly round hole there. You're going to have to press on this and hold it to make sure that that hole stays open. Just get my little bench block here. Make sure we have a straight shot through there. While we put the pin, while we start the pin there, then we want to just start pounding that through. And that's enough to kind of hold the extractor in place. So now we're going to need to get our pin punch and continue pushing that down. Pound this in until that is flush with the bottom. Alright, that's flush with the bottom. That's flush with the top. When we press out on the extractor claw right here, it comes out against spring pressure. We can feel everything looks good. Okay, now that the extractor's back in, we just want to put the optics cover back on. Again, that's with your Torx number 8. Screw that in with your Torx number 8 screwdriver. Get that nice and snug. Alright, now the next thing we want to do is put the firing pin back in. Make sure that your firing pin and spacer look just like that. Okay, and then this only goes in one way. Goes right through the channel here. Lines that up. And then that's only going to go so far. You just need to press down on the safety plunger to get it past the safety plunger. Push that in a little bit more, about like that. And now we just need to get the back cover back on there. The back cover will slide in like this, but you're going to have to press down on that spacer to allow that to slide up. So you get it in there like this, put a little bit of pressure with this finger, take a little bit bigger pin punch, and just press down on the spacer till you get it to that point. And then once you get it there, you should be able to just press that and snap it back into place. Alright, and then you can kind of test things here by pressing back on this lug. Don't let go of it and let it snap forward. Just press it back, make sure there's good spring pressure there. Alright, make sure that this plunger pops back up under spring pressure when you press on it. Okay, and the other thing you can test is, so looking at the breech face, you want to make sure that when you press on this firing pin forward, it doesn't come through the hole here, unless you are also pressing on this safety pin. And then when you press this, it'll allow the firing pin to poke through the breech face like that. And when you let it go, you shouldn't be able to. Alright, that's a safety feature. Alright, so now we have the slide all back together. Now you just need to drop in your barrel, drop in your recoil spring and guide rod, then line it back up on your frame, slide it on, slide it all the way back, lock it in place with the slide stop, rotate your takedown lever, release the slide, make sure it feels right. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is a function and safety check. I'll put a video up here in the corner so you can just run through a couple quick tests to make sure everything's working on your Shield Plus. If you found this video valuable, please check out the links below for all the products that we used in this video, and please subscribe, hit like below, and thank you for watching. Today I'm going to show you how to reverse the magazine release on a M&P Shield Plus so that it can be more comfortable to use for a left-handed shooter. This procedure is quite simple. First, we to unload the gun as always, lock the slide back, verify that we have no round in the chamber so that we can safely work on this firearm. If you look on your Shield Plus on the other side of the magazine release, you'll see that there's what looks like a little screw in there. That's exactly what that is, but it only turns about a quarter of a turn. So you want to take a very small screwdriver. This one's a 3/32 screwdriver. Put your screwdriver in there, press down gently, turn it counterclockwise 1/4 turn, and release. And now if you push the magazine release from the other side, the whole release is going to come out. Super simple. And this is what the magazine release looks like. So what you're doing with the screwdriver is simply moving this tab over and back. This is the lock position, this is the unlock position. So now we want to put it in the other way, so we want to have it on this side of the gun. So take the magazine release side, which is the textured side, and push it through from the other side. Turn the gun over, put your screwdriver in there, just with gentle pressure push down, turn it a quarter turn clockwise, release. It'll look like that, and then make sure that it feels right, and then be sure to test it. Put the magazine in, make sure it doesn't come out unless you press the magazine release. A word of caution: if you press the screw down too hard while trying to loosen it, it is possible that you're going to pop this thing apart. So please don't do that. Okay, so if you did happen to have this come apart on you like this, hopefully you are able to find the parts and they didn't launch across the room. So I just want to show you how to put that back together. Okay, so you want to take the spring and put it on this piece like so, and then put that into here like this. You gotta be very, very careful here that you don't launch this across the room. So you want to press this down. You want to work it down in there like that. You have to wiggle it back and forth a little bit. Push it down in there like so. Just try and wiggle that around. so it lines up. That was a little difficult, so you want to be very, very careful that you get a good grip on this. So be real careful not to let that happen in the first place, and you'll be a lot better off. When you're putting the magazine release back in the gun, you want to make sure that this tab is kind of lined up with these tabs like that. Okay, because that is the unlocked position, and if you push it down a little and turn it, that is the locked position. So that's the position it'll be in when it's in the gun and locked in place.